Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Giving honor and praise unto the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshaya bin Israel of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This particular teaching, brothers and sisters, all right, is dedicated to sit there and spread the truth of what it is about who we are as a people historically and so forth and so on. All right, so hopefully, brothers and sisters, this will be enlightening and edification. I'm going to have to ask in the beginning of this for people to get your pens, your pads, your paper, so that way we can begin to get into this aspect. Now, this is supposed to start at 8:30. Now, the reason why I'm starting a couple of minutes before, several or so minutes before, is so that way we can gain an understanding due to a lot of presentations that has been going on concerning Israelites and so forth. There is a teaching, and this is not to bash anyone, but there is a teaching and a presentation that has been going around, speaking, brothers and sisters, in regards to saying that we, the black people in the Western Hemisphere, who we say are the children of Israel, of the scriptures, was brought here in 1619, and that Genesis chapter 15, speaking of 400 years, brothers and sisters, means that starting from 1619 all the way to now, brothers and sisters, which is 2019, that this must be the year of our deliverance. This is what some Israelites are teaching. And what we want to sit there and point out, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes, is the fact that in the scriptures, Genesis chapter 15, right? Genesis 15. Let's go there if we will. All right. And then go to some other aspects and then continue, should I say. All right. How's everybody doing? Hopefully everybody is well. All right. If I can be heard, give me a 2 and so forth. I already heard myself, so I'm ready, gave a 2. So let's go, if we will, to Genesis chapter 15. All right. So we can speak upon the subject very, very intensely, if we will. All right. And it says this. Genesis chapter 15, and we're going to start, all right, in verse 13. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward they shall come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, and thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet filled. Now, Genesis chapter 15, which is taken by many brothers and sisters and speaking about 400 years, there are Israelites teaching that that means from 1619 AD to now 2019 AD, that must be the time of our deliverance. There's a couple of things to point out in that particular regard. One, in Genesis chapter 15, verse 16, it distinctly says, but in the 4th generation. The 4th generation of what? The 4th generation of them having started off as captives in a land that's not theirs. Joseph was a captive in the land that was not his. Joseph and Levi are the same generation. They're brothers. So if you understand the generational line, you have Levi, and after Levi, you have Kohath, and after Kohath, you have Amram, and after Amram, you have Moses. That's 4 generations. Joseph being a captive in Egypt, oppressed in a land that's not his. Joseph is a descendant of Abraham, so he's already of the seed of Abraham. So the 4 generations, right, that we see in Genesis chapter 15, verse 16, lets us know, brothers and sisters, that it's emphatically no way, shape, form, or fashion talking about our people inside of what we call America. That's to be pointed out. Now, of course, we want to get up out of this place, but we can't at the same token try to not trying to sound disrespectful, force a prophecy to mean something that it doesn't mean, because we want to sit there and see deliverance and say, well, if you don't agree or if you don't understand those who are saying the 1619 to the 2019 date, that means you must love the oppression. No, the solution is to keep the commandments, like it says in Leviticus chapter 26. Let's start there. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 26, verse 40, because the Torah holds the antidote to the problems of the black man. All right? Leviticus chapter 26, verse 40. All right? So we can gain some understanding of what we're talking about. Let's go there. Leviticus chapter 26, verse 40 says the following. If they, speaking of Israel, shall confess their iniquity and iniquity of their fathers, with their trespass which they trespassed against me, so that they have walked contrary unto me, and that I have also walked contrary unto them, and brought them into the land of their enemies. And then, if then their uncircumcised hearts be humbled, and they then accept the punishment of their iniquity, then will I remember my covenant with Jacob and my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham will I remember, and I will remember the land. Now, let's point this out, brothers and sisters. As one of the people pointed out inside of the live chat, to sit there and say that Genesis chapter 15 about the 400 years is about the 1619 to now the 2019 date. Brothers and sisters, the issue is you're forgetting about or don't care about the black man, woman, and child inside of Jamaica, Trinidad, Belize, Panama, Brazil, Guyana, Venezuela, and Honduras. You do know that the Atlantic slave trade, brothers and sisters, coming from Western and Southeastern Africa, coming west, we do know that the Atlantic slave trade was also from Madagascar and Mozambique. The Portuguese was doing that. We do know that, right? We just don't think that the Atlantic slave trade was just from Ghana, Nigeria, and Liberia. You do know that Mozambique and Madagascar was operated by the Portuguese, and they used to go under Southern Africa and ship black people as slaves to Pernambuco and Bahia, in a place that we call Brazil today. Okay. Oh, brother, this list goes on and on about those in the islands, about Haiti and Dominican Republic. We go on and on and on and on with that list. But you're not wrong. And I do thank you for even typing that in, Ak. But this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. Brothers and sisters, the black people that was taken to Jamestown, Virginia in the year 1619 was already captives in Brazil. They were already captives in Brazil. The Dutch brought those people over to the place that we call Jamestown, Virginia. Furthermore, that is the timing when you understand colonial American history, that 1607, brothers and sisters, is when Virginia became colony to the British. We already understand that the Atlantic slave trade going to what we call South and North Carolina was already in operation since 1526. So when we get into this topic, please understand history, brothers and sisters. Understand that you cannot fit Genesis chapter 15 about the 400 years and then try to take the Amno Denomi idolatry date. When you look at it, you don't know Amno Denomi AD or even CE Common Era. That's not the time frame that Yah operates on. We can't put 400 years and then say this Gregorian calendar and then try to put the Most High prophecy in that type of frame just because we hate America and the captivity that we in. It tells you in Leviticus 26, black man, what to do. You want to see less situations in California when a brother is getting shot like the rapper was just this past weekend? Keep the commandments of the Most High. You want to see less situations like Nipsey and like my cousin that got shot in Brooklyn? Keep the commandments of the Most High. That's the solution. So these are things we want to point out for edification purposes, brothers and sisters. All right? So hopefully, all right, we can sit there and get into this particular aspect in this particular presentation. All right? For edification purposes. Now, let's go, if we will, to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 23, if we will. We are in Jeremiah, the 23rd chapter, and we want to start, brothers and sisters, in verse 1. Woe be unto the pastors that destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, saith the Most High. Therefore, thus says Yah Elohim Yisrael, against the pastors that feed my people. Ye have scattered my flock and driven them away, and have not visited them. Behold, I will visit upon you the evil of your doing, saith the Most High. Let's go into verse 9. My heart within me is, we are in Jeremiah 23, verse 9. My heart within me is broken because of the prophets, or my bow shake. I am like a drunken man, and like a man whom wine have overcome, because of Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, and because of the words of his holiness. For the land is full of adulterers, for because of swearing, the land mourneth. The pleasant places of the wilderness are dried up, and their course is evil, and their force is not right. For both prophet and priest are profane. Yea, in my house have I found their wickedness, saith the Most High. Let's go down into verse 13. And I have seen folly in the prophets of Samaria that prophesied in Baal and caused my people Yisrael to err. Now let's understand something. How can we understand about the aspect of Baal, which was part of the pantheon of the Canaanite deities? Did you know that one of the Canaanite gods had a vegetation date? So when it died, it came back up. Just like they worship vegetation, agricultural societies, if you will, that actually made gods out of what they call nature. Did you know that the main theme in the New Testament is that Jesus died and rose again? So when we think about Baal of Canaan, which was practiced by the Phoenicians, which was later on transformed into the Greek aspect, then we see Jesus, the S-U-S, like Dionysus, and so forth and so on, like Zeus. We begin to see exactly what this is talking about. Those who would believe that Jesus died and rose up again, just like the Canaanite gods were said to have died in vegetation and rose up again. These are things, brothers and sisters, that we want to talk about for edification purposes. You cannot, my brothers and sisters, fit the Most High's time frame of the 400 years and then try to make it force fit into Anno Denomita. The time frame that we're talking about, for instance, you look at October. October, OCT, goes back to the Latin for 8, like octopus has 8 arms. Like octagon, OCT, represents 8 in Latin. November, NOV, like nueve in Spanish, means and represents 9. December, DEC, like a decade is 10 years. December was originally in their calendar the 10th month. What happened was they squeezed in July for Julius Caesar and August for Augustus Caesar. So now they did not change the aspect of October, OCT. Octagon has 8 sides. Octopus has 8 arms. DEC, as in December. Decade has 10 years. Decimal means a tenth of something. So by them adding what they call the month of July and August, how then can you try to take a 1619 date and squeeze it into the prophecy of the Most High God? How can you do that? You can't. It's a false prophecy, brothers and sisters. It's a misunderstanding of Genesis chapter 15. We already explained in history about the 1619 date that the people brought to Jamestown, Virginia by, as the guy said, a Dutch man of war. Those people were already captives in Brazil. Study about the wars in the 1600s between the Dutch and the Portuguese over who was going to control the place called Pernambuco. See, as the brother pointed out inside of the chat, when You're taking the 1619 date. You're saying forget all about the enslavement of our people in the Caribbean and in South America. Brazil ended slavery in legal terms in 1888. 1888. That's just a little. I remember 1988. I was 8 inside of the camp as a child. So that means 100 years before that. And this is now 131 years since Brazil ended the slave trade. Or should I say ended slavery? The last slave ship to come to what we call North America was in 1859. Or some say 1860. You understand? The first recorded slave ship to come what we call in continental North America, the United States, or what became the United States, was dated all the way back to 1526 by a person named Vasquez Elon. You may want to look that up. Vasquez Elon. In 1526. So there, are you going to say that the people before 1619 in the Atlantic slave trade were not Israelites in order to try to fit your prophecy in or your misunderstanding of the Most High God's word? Let's see what Yah said about people who make a prophecy inside of the scriptures itself. Let's go on. Jeremiah chapter 23, and we're going to start in verse 14. I have also seen in the prophets of Jerusalem a horrible thing. They commit adultery and walk in lies. You're walking in a lie when you try to sit there and date the black man's oppression all the way to just 1619. That's just when the British decide to record it in what they call their colony. Because the colonies ended in 1776 after what they had the Constitution and so forth and so on. So this is when we talk about knowing some history, get into knowing some history. I think this is titled correctly, giving thanks to Yah Eloheinu, the Lord our God. What is the date you think? It's not what we think. The Leviticus chapter 26 tells you, black man, what your solution is if you bethink yourself and confess your iniquity. No, we're going to sit there and debate about the dating of the Most High's timetable and try to squeeze in a European date schedule into the word of the Most High. You're taking the oppressor's time schedule. This ain't got nothing to do with Shabbat, and some people try to say, oh, the calendar this. You're taking literally his recorded time of 1619 and saying 2019 must be that date. Do you realize how much prophecies has not come to pass yet? Furthermore, every time there was a leader, the Most High let us know who the leader is. Isaiah, either chapter 30 or chapter 33, it says, your eyes shall see your teachers. So who's the leader that's going to take us up out of this Egypt, out of this Babylon? Who's that person? Or who is that group? Because the Most High talked about people who do things on their own accord and then try to say, thus saith Yah, when the Most High has not said it. Let's continue and see what we're talking about. Jeremiah 23, verse 15. Therefore, thus saith Yah of hosts, concerning the prophets, behold, I will feed them with wormwood and make them drink the water of gall. For from the prophets of Jerusalem is profane is gone forth into all the land. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, hearken not unto the words of the prophets that prophesy unto you. They make you vain. They speak a vision of their own heart and not out of the mouth of the Lord. What does it say in Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 16? Thus says the Lord of hosts, hearken not unto the words of the prophets that prophesy unto you, that make you vain. Make you vain. Yeah, we got hope. We're going to see a deliverance. They speak a vision of their own heart and not out of the mouth of the Most High. They say still unto them that despise me, Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh has said, ye shall have peace. And they say unto everyone that walketh after the imagination of his own heart, no evil shall come upon you. we're going to have peace and there's going to be a deliverance, because it's 400 years ever since 1619. They speak a vision out of their own heart and not out of the word of the Most High. Let's continue, brothers and sisters. For who, this is Jeremiah 23, verse 18, for who has stood in the counsel of Yah and have perceived and heard his word? Who hath marked his word and heard it? Please tell me who that prophet is today. Who has stood and said, you know what, Yah told me this. It's not a session when you got to sit down and debate the scriptures with yourselves in different camps and congregations. The Most High is asking this question right here. And it says, for who have stood in the counsel of the Most High? Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 18. And have perceived and heard his word. Who have marked his word and heard it? Please give me the date. You want to ask me a date? When date do you think it is? You tell me the date that the Most High let you know it was 2019. Who has marked his word? What mark can you say, on this date, I was told this? Let's see what Elohim said. Behold, a whirlwind of the Most High is gone forth in fury, even a grievous whirlwind. It shall fall grievously upon the head of the wicked. The anger of Yah shall not return until he have executed, until he have performed the thoughts of his heart. In the latter days, ye shall consider it perfectly. I have not sent these prophets, yet they ran. I have not spoken to them, yet they prophesied. But if they had stood in my counsel and had caused my people to hear my words, then they should have turned them from their evil way and from the evil of their doings. So the answer, well, what do you think the answer is? Keep the commandments of the Most High. Turn away from the evil of your doings. I don't need to tell you a date when that was said, because that was said in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Samuel, Psalms, and in Jeremiah. Turn from your evil ways. You don't have to sit there and debate what the date is. You got to sit there and debate. What does Solomon say? He who conquers the spirit is greater than he who conquers the city. So when you're up there trying to sit there and present a debate about the word of the Most High, shalom, it's been real. I'm not going back and forth about that. You understand? Let's go on, if you will, to Ezekiel chapter 13, so we can begin to see what it is. The Most High spoke of these kind of brothers and sisters. Ezekiel chapter 13, verse 1. And the word of Yah came unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy against the prophets of Israel, that prophesy and say unto them, that prophesy out of their own hearts. We are in Ezekiel chapter 13. Thus saith Yah, hear ye the word of Yah. Woe unto the foolish prophets that follow their own spirit and have seen nothing. That's what it says right here in Ezekiel. Please let us know, brothers and sisters, when did you get a date to sit there and try to say the Most High is going to do something? Because if you're speaking in the name of Yah and you're saying Yah is going to do something a certain day, you know what he said, right? You do know what he said, right? Sometimes it's just best to be wise and be silent. Hi, wa mate, balashon. Life and death is in the tongue. Don't sit there and try to say the Most High will do something based on a Gregorian calendar. As we already explained in linguistics, July and August was fit in. The prophecies was already established before these calendars that we're dealing with. So how are you going to try to fit it in that? And then forget, brothers and sisters, not for nothing, during the Atlantic slave trade, the minority came to what you call United States. The majority went to Brazil. Did you know that? The majority of, listen, in history, 30% of the people of the slave trade who are victims went straight to Brazil. 30%. So out of every 100 slave ships, 30 of them went directly to Brazil. Thanks to Mr. Dutch and Mr. Portuguese. Why do you think, for instance, there's so many black people in Brazil? Brazil got more black people per square mile than anywhere else in the entire Western Hemisphere. Did you know that? Did you know that Bahia and Pernambuco and places like that in Brazil have a high quantity of what you call negros, blacks? Did you know Colombia has thousands and thousands of blacks? See, the 1619 date doesn't sit there and cover the slave trade that happened in the West Indies. It does not cover, brothers and sisters, the slave trade that happened in Brazil. It doesn't cover, brothers and sisters, the slave trade that happened in Guyana and in French Suriname and so forth and so on. You read about the Demerara Rebellion? Look that up, Demerara Rebellion in the 1740s. You look up the aspect of Daddy Sharp, who they called Ebo Sharp in Jamaica in the 1830s. The same time Nat Turner was rebelling in Virginia, black people in Jamaica was also rebellion under a man named Sharp. Look that up in history. Look up the guy named Daga of Trinidad that led a slave revolt. Look up the guy named Toussaint the Overtor in Dessalines in a place we call Haiti today. We can't just sit there and fit Black American history and try to say that covers it all. It was the 6% of the slave trade that came to places like where my mama from, called North Carolina, called Virginia, called Georgia, called Alabama, called Louisiana. The United States received the least of the slave trade. My father's side, may he rest in peace, going back to Virginia. My mother's side, may she rest in peace, going back to North Carolina and Texas. You understand? So these are things we want to point out. Know some history, O house of Israel. Let's see what the Most High continued to say about the people who spoke a vision out of their own heart. Ezekiel chapter 13, verse 4. O Israel, O Israel, thy prophets are like the foxes in the desert. Ye have not gone up into the gaps, neither made up the heads of the house of Israel to stand in a battle in the day of Yah. So when the Most High does bring judgment, where are the people at trying to sit there and warn them, the sword is coming, repent? They have seen vanity and lying divination, saying, the Lord saith, and the Lord hath not sent them. And they have made others to hope that they would confirm the word. So we're going to sit there and gather together, and we're all going to have a conference and talk about whether or not 1619 to 2019. What did the Most High say in Ezekiel chapter 13? And we want to read this again, verse 6. They have seen vanity and lying divination, saying, the Lord Yah saith, because I don't want people to misunderstand when we say Lord. And the Lord Yah have not sent them. And they have made others to hope that they would confirm the word. So if I can get you together in this one and get you together in this one, and we're going to say it's going to be this year. Thus saith the Most High. You have seen a vain vision, and have ye spoken a lying divination, whereas you say the Lord saith, albeit I, Yah, have not spoken? Therefore, thus saith Yah Elohim, because ye have spoken vanity and seen lies. Therefore, behold, I am against you, saith the Lord God, and my hand shall be upon the prophets that see vanity and that divine lies. They shall not be in the assembly of my people, neither shall they be written in the writing of the house of Israel, neither shall they enter into the land of Israel, and ye shall know that I am the Lord God, because they have seduced my people, saying peace, and there was no peace. One built up a wall, and lo, others dubbed it with untempered mortar. Say unto them, which dub it with untempered mortar, that it shall fall. There shall be an overflowing shower, and ye, O ye hailstones, shall fall, and a stormy wind shall rend it. Let's go to verse 13. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, I will even rend it with a stormy wind in my fury, and there shall be an overflowing shower in my anger, and great hailstones in my fury to consume it. So will I break down the wall that ye have dug with untempered mortar, and bring it down to the ground, so that the foundation thereof shall be discovered, and it shall fall, and ye shall be consumed in the midst thereof, and ye shall know that I am Yah. Thus will I accomplish my wrath upon the wall, and upon them that have dubbed it with untempered mortar. and will say unto you, the wall is no more, neither they that dubbed it. Verse 17, and we're going to close out. This particular part. Likewise, thou son of man, set thy face against the daughters of your people. Ezekiel chapter 13, verse 17. Likewise, thus it says, thou son of man, set thy face against the daughters of your people, which prophesy out of their own heart, and prophesy thou unto them, and say, thus saith the Lord God, woe to the women that sew pillows and all armholes, and make handkerchiefs upon the head of every statue to hunt souls. Will you hunt the souls of my people, and will you save the souls alive that come unto you? Those are predator women, brothers and sisters. That's what the Most High is talking about in Ezekiel. The prophets, male and female alike, that's speaking out of their own heart, brothers and sisters. All right? So that was basically a half-hour intro about the aspect of brothers and sisters trying to sit there and say that this prophecy we see in Genesis chapter 15 of 400 years must be talking about 1619 to 2019. Brothers and sisters, it's not talking about that. The 4 generations that you see in Genesis chapter 15, verse 16, it says the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet filled. The book of Hosea, brothers and sisters, the book of Amos. Amos says that the Most High destroyed the Amorites before the Israelites. So we understand what's going on? Genesis chapter 15, verse 16 says the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet filled. Then when we get, brothers and sisters, to the aspect of Israel fighting the Amorites, and then in the book of Numbers and in Deuteronomy, then when we get, brothers and sisters, to the book of Amos, it says that the Most High destroyed the Amorites. So Genesis chapter 15 is not talking about the black man in Brooklyn, Bronx, Charlotte, North Carolina, Greensboro, or Miami, Florida. You understand? So hopefully it's understood. You cannot try to force squeeze a Gregorian idolatrous AD, Amno Denomi, based upon the counting of idolatry, and then sit there and use that calculation to sit there and say the 400 years must be according to that. That is why it says you have seen a vain vision, because the Most High has not sent you to sit there and tell the people. That's why it asks the question in Jeremiah 23. If you was told to teach the people this in a prophecy, then where's the mark at? What space were you in? Where were you at? And what time about or exact did the Most High tell you this particular thing? Because see, Ezekiel says he was by the river Chabar, and the word Yah came expressly unto him. It says that Yah spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt. Where did the Most High speak to you at to tell you that this year, 2019, must be the deliverance? And you incorporating the Creator with that? Brothers and sisters, stop doing that. Hopefully this is a helper, because the Most High, we don't want to see what happened to Hananiah and Jeremiah when he died in the 7th month, because he told a false date about Israel's deliverance from Babylon. Don't sit there and play games with the word of the Most High. Don't do it. Know when to fall back and say, let's just live right and Yah will deliver us, because living right takes a lot more than just holding a meeting. You understand? So, brothers and sisters, this is dedicated to the Israelites. This is presented by an Israelite in the hopes that more Israelites will begin to read and study and understand the truth and a better understanding of the diaspora of the tribes of Israel. Are there any questions or comments concerning what we've gone over so far? Questions, comments? All right. Are there any questions or comments? Next slide, brothers and sisters. Jeremiah chapter 44. the word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the Jews that dwelt in the land of Egypt, that dwelt at Migdol and at Tappares and at Noth and in the country of Patros, saying, now, what was the point in going over this? Jeremiah, brothers and sisters, was a prophet that was living during the time when Babylon was ruling the known world. Now, let's look at this and point some things out, right? Let's highlight something. That dwelt at Migdol, right? And at Tapanhes, right? And, brothers and sisters, and at Patros. So let's circle what we're looking at with the pen. We have Migdol, right? We have Tapanhes. Tapanhes was called Daphne by the Greeks. Now let's look at the land of Patros. And in the land of Patros, we see that right there just circled? There were Israelites in the land of Egypt going all the way that far south according to the Bible. Brothers and sisters, please show where the Bible is talking about in ancient days that the Israelites were going over into the land of Europe. I'm not saying that there were not Israelites in Italy in history, in England in history, in Greece in history. I'm not saying that. But my question specifically is this. If we can show, and I'm speaking, say, the Old Testament, right, where it says that the Israelites were going to European places. Do we understand that question? Because see, the book of Joel, as we've gone over before, brothers and sisters, right? It says that the Hamites sold the people of Judah to the Greeks. So Israelites wound up being in Greece, brothers and sisters, by being sold there, still in the Old Testament time. My question is, when did the Israelites go to European places? We could quote one in the era of Solomon going to the land of Tarshish, which was Spain. Spain was colonized by the Greeks. Brothers and sisters, the Israelites in bulk, as we see here in Jeremiah, were going to places in what we call continental Africa. We just want to show what the Bible in the Tanakh, the Old Testament says, and show where these lands are on a map. Egypt, Patros, as it says, and in the country of Patros, the land of Patros. Do we see that? Are there any questions so far about what we've gone over? Next slide. Some places where the Israelites went. Now, this magazine you see here is Hit Magazine. Hit Magazine, brothers and sisters, is a magazine that you can sit there and get online. All right? So you may want to patronize that. I'm going to take the opportune time and type in the guy's name. All right? He's on Facebook, Tyrone Webb. He's an elder. So I would say sir or don't. But when you look him up on Facebook, brothers and sisters, he can sit there and get you an Israelite authored magazine. There used to be an Israelite magazine called Hebrew Magazine. All right? There may be people in the room who know who I'm talking about. When I was in a congregation called Kosher Erit, right, which is located in the Bronx, there was a man there by the name of Adon Doreshiel. And he was an author like almost none other. He made magazines, helped people with authorship, and so forth and so on. Right? He had a magazine called Hebrew Magazine that used to be out in the 1990s. The 1990s. There was an elder by the name of Elder Yehoshaphat ben Yisrael out of the place in America. I don't want to even state what state that the man is from, out of his privacy. He ran a thing called the Jerusalem Chronicle, which dates back all the way to the 1980s. You understand? So we have to continue these kind of things. All right? So what do we see right here? We want to show with the highlighter, or should I say the laser pointer, Mizpeh. We want to remember Mizpeh because Mizpeh and Mizpah Same thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Then Bethlehem, remember this, and we're going to show why as we go along. Mizpeh, also referred to as Mizpah. Remember why I'm asking the people to remember this. This is why I say get your pens, your notes, your pads for this kind of edification purposes. Giving honor and praise unto the creator and the maker of heaven and earth. Let's go on. We already went over these lands right here. So if they was in the land of Patros in Jeremiah 44, brothers and sisters, what can we glean out of looking at this land right here? Yeb. Yeb. It's an island. We'll see how this becomes important as we go on. Next slide. Matter of Elephantine. Now, what is the point in showing that? Okay, the people you see there on the left-hand side, not trying to be funny, is legitimate, real Hamites. The people you see there on the left-hand side are not Israelites. Not every black man is an Israelite. All right, we already know and understand that, right? Good. So let's go on for edification purposes, right? The people you see there on the left-hand side are part of the original people of Mizraim, or the original Egyptians. When you go into a book, brothers and sisters, called the Arab Invasion of Egypt by Alfred Butler, all right, that author gets into what happened in 641 AD and so forth and so on, when many of the true Egyptians were pushed down to what we call the Sudan of today. Many of the people in the Congo of today are part of the true people of ancient Egypt. And guess what? They don't subscribe to the channels in North America talking about the Kemet stuff. Did you know that? Did you know that the original Egyptians, like you see those guys right there, you know you're not going to see them go in these debates with the Kemetic community trying to debate Israelites. You know that, right? Okay, so now let's look at, brothers and sisters, this particular aspect here. This is part of the Elephantine Papyrus. When you go into a book called Extra Biblical Sources for Hebrew and Jewish History, all right, by Samuel Mercer, you will begin to see the translation of the Elephantine Papyrus. The Elephantine Papyrus has been translated in other presentations, such as the video called From Avaris to Alabama. But I just wanted to show this right here for edification purposes. So you may want to look that video up on the channel. From Avaris to Alabama. And subscribe to the channel. From Avaris to Alabama. You may want to look that up. Next slide, please. But before such, let's understand why this right here was even shown. Elephantine Papyrus. What's the difference between Elephantine and Yeb? Absolutely nothing. The Elephantine Papyrus was written by Israelites. Did you know that? The Elephantine Papyrus is written in Aramaic by Israelites that were part of the same people that Jeremiah 44 talks about. Where is there any Hebrew writing before Herod? Asked the Kemetic community. And that's how you know who runs what. Herod was Esau, an Edomite, and Idumean, the son of Antipater. He was the friend of Augustus. You know Augustus, the one that we spoke of earlier, who they named the month of August after. Do you see how they're all buddies and friends? And you see, as Psalms 83 says, what? They all hold crafty counsel to sit there and cut the name of Israel off from remembrance. So the Elephantine Papyrus actually speaks about the temple that was in Elephantine, called the Temple of Yahoo. Oh, let's go in, brothers and sisters, so we can gain understanding of what we're talking about. The biblical island of Yeb, commonly known as Elephantine Island, because of its shape, like the head of a trunk of an elephant, is located in the Nile near Aswan. It is close to Egypt's border with the biblical land of Cush, aka Nubia, or contemporary Sudan. It had a serviceable harbor and was very active following the time of Joseph. So what are we looking at for edification purposes? This is why this is called Israelites Learn Some History. Brothers and sisters, Let's look at this right here that's being circled, right? It says what? Pithom and Goshen and Heliopolis. Heliopolis that you see right there underlined, brothers and sisters, was called that by the Greeks. The Israelites refer to that land as the land of On. So when you go in Genesis about Potiphar, the priest of On, brothers and sisters, is what the Greeks later on called Heliopolis, and the Egyptians called that land Ainu. So we may want to get some linguistics so understand what we're talking about for edification purposes. Learn some history, O house of Israel. Let's go in, brothers and sisters. All right. What do we see? Right here being circled. Right? And I want to color code this a little different if we will. All right. Highlighter. We want to highlight what's inside of that. All right. You see that? Sayin and Elephantine. Elephantine is also known as Yeb. So the Israelites in Yeb and the Israelites in Elephantine, we can already see what this is talking about. Ethiopia. Israelites is going that far down? Yeah, they were. Let's go on to the next slide. Some notes and a map, just for in case we want to go over this again. Semitic peoples called the Amu, or quote, Asiatics by the Egyptians, established a colony during the quote, second intermediate period on Yeb and on the eastern now bank of Sayin, now Aswan, to trade with the Nubians. Israelites were part of the Amu, but not all Amu were Israelites. All Israelites would have been called Amu or Asiatics, but there were Asiatics in Egypt that were not Israelites. All right? The Hyksos in part would have been called part of the Amu. So now when you see second intermediate period of ancient Egypt, the time after that, brothers and sisters, you get into what you call the era of the rise of the Hyksos. You understand? Any questions? Feel free to comment. Let's go on to the next part. Just in case we want to see the map a bit clearer. See? Elephantine, Ethiopia, because it wasn't shown clearly earlier, and Nubia, right? Then we see over here Goshen, Memphis. Why does that become important, brothers and sisters? We want to go and show for edification purposes on what we're talking about. All right? So therefore, we can gain and have understanding of certain things. Right? The Nile River flows this way, and it dumps into the Mediterranean. This would have been Jerusalem, or is Jerusalem. The Israelites were known for fleeing down here. So let's draw some arrows so we can gain understanding. For the Israelites coming in here, the Israelites coming down here, down here, down here, down there, being scattered. The Israelites going to these different places. Gondar, where the so-called Philoshes today are. Brothers and sisters, learn some history. Next slide, please. Some notes. Blocked from escape to the east, many Jews, speaking of the Israelites, many Jews found refuge to the west. The westward movement of the Jews from Egypt and Cyrenaica. Do you know what Cyrenaica is? Libya. So we can gain some understanding of what we're talking about, right? To the Barbary states was once again swelled by the expulsion of the Jews from Alexandria by Bishop Cyril in 414 AD, and by recurrent Byzantine expulsions through the next few centuries. You know why this becomes important? Because this right here is external source about the diaspora of Israel. Right? The Byzantine Empire fell, brothers and sisters, in 1453 AD. The Atlantic slave trade going west started in 1518 AD. The Atlantic slave trade initially started in 1440 by the people that was working for who they call Henry the Navigator. See, all of that's forgotten when you stuck on the 1619 date. And this is not to say the people in 1619 were not victims, but they were not, unfortunately, the first victim. Okay, so let's go on. As a result of the Emperor Justinian's intolerant policies in the 6th century, meaning the 6th century AD, Jews were driven inland and found again refuge among the hinterland Berber tribesmen. Berber tribesmen. You ever heard of Queen Kahina? Brothers and sisters, Queen Kahina of the Berbers stated that they were the people of Judah in the 7th century Anno Domini or CE. These are things we want to point out when we speak about learn some history, all right? The Berbers not only welcomed the Jews, but 8 of the tribes, impressed with the erudition, and technological acumen of the Jews, disavowed their Shemitic pagan concepts and adopted Judaism. Now, when we say adopted Judaism, they're talking about getting into the ways of the Torah, because the people that were, quote, the Jews in Northern Africa did not sit there and subscribe to Rashi and Rambam and so forth and so on, in which you get the culmination of the modern Talmud. All right, so these are just things we want to talk about for edification purposes. Let's go on. All right. Elephantine colony of Jewish mercenaries and Persian service in the 5th century, with a temple of Yahweh disappeared after that. Elephantine Island had a temple that was dedicated, brothers and sisters, to who some would pronounce as Yahoo, some will pronounce as Yahweh. Unfortunately, they did worship Egyptian gods as well. You understand? That's an unfortunate aspect. Now, what you're looking at, brothers and sisters, is a book that I wrote on the right-hand side, right? Who were the people taken as captive from West Africa and chained in unsanitary ships to the Americas? The children of Israel, the Israelites. In the book, Hebrewisms of West Africa, we see the following. John Ogleby, Master of His Majesty's Revels in the Kingdom of Ireland, published in 1679, brothers and sisters, let's go in, a volume on Africa, wherein he speaks of the coast of Guinea as follows. Many Jews are also scattered over this region. We're talking about the place called Guinea. This is in Western Africa. Some natives, meaning original Hamites, let's go in and explain, boasting themselves of Abraham's seed, inhabited both sides of the river Niger. So, brothers and sisters, this says some natives boasting themselves of Abraham's seed. We can begin to see how the Israelites made an impression on Hamite peoples in Africa and made some of the people in Africa want to follow the ways of the house of Israel. We are very impressionable. Not all Israelites are in Africa, and not everyone in Africa is an Israelite. You understand? The Most High knows who the children of Israel are. So let's go on, if we will, brothers and sisters, into this particular aspect, right? Others are Asian strangers. So let's see where these people, the Israelites, would have been called Asian before. So we could begin to see Semitic peoples, right, called the Amu or Asiatics by the Egyptians. They established a colony. Brothers and sisters, there were no white people in the second intermediate period of Egypt, or the Middle Kingdom, or the Old Kingdom, or the first intermediate period, or the New Kingdom, or the Late Kingdom. White people don't start getting into Egypt till you get to the aspect of the Ptolemies, which is right after their great dude, Alexander. So, brothers and sisters, when we're sitting up there and talking about learning some history, now we want to sit there and show connection line upon line with this. The guy goes on to say, others are Asian strangers who fled there. Thither means there. Where's there? There is Guinea, right? Who fled there. I want to sit there and erase this because it doesn't look right. I'm not crossing Vespasian out. Not that dude. He already paid for his iniquities. All right. Fled there either from the desolation of Jerusalem by Vespasian or from Judea, wasted and depopulated by the Romans, Persians, Saracens, and the Christians, or else as such came up out of Europe, as such came out of Europe when they were banished, etc. Brothers and sisters, what did we just read right there according to John Ogerby? They were Israelites in Guinea. Guinea's in West Africa. Next slide. The old slaves were killed for reading. The new slaves won't read if it killed them. Yeah, I got that meme from Facebook. And it's true. It's true, brothers and sisters. The old slaves were killed for reading. If you don't think so, all you got to do is watch the old time movie called Mandingo. Mandingo was a movie based upon slavery in Louisiana, in which a man was killed for reading. They beat the man with a paddle to death in the movie, and the charge was, oh, he was reading. See, the thing is, was for me to sit there and make sure we don't read. And you still got some people who just don't read. You understand? Let's look at this right here. This, what we're seeing in the bottom, all right, that I'm sitting up there and circling or so, or squaring it off, okay? In the red, Jews, 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 Levite cities, Jews, Levite cities, Jews, Ghana. There was another one I wanted to point out. Timbuktu. Brothers and sisters, you know where this map comes from? It comes from the book called Valley of the Dry Bones, written by Rudolph Windsor. That's where that map comes from. Brothers and sisters, the Israelites were known by many cases of having scattered into Western Africa in part. We went over this several examples. The video called from Aversa, Alabama. You can subscribe to the channel and look that up. The video called from Simeon to Dan. I want to type that in. Pardon me. It's called, not from, but Simeon and Dan. In that video on this channel, we explained about the diaspora of Israel, very extensive, showing pictures and testimonials of people in Africa talking about they're from the land of Israel. Not too hard to figure out. So you had the Dagom tribe, or the people of Ga that live in Togo, Western Africa, that say they come out of the land of Israel. And then you had already John Ogerby, for those who swear these Negroes just want to feel special. You had a white man named John Ogerby that said the same thing. So for all the people who need, quote, not to be racial, but for all the people who need a white man to co-sign something, look up your homeboy, John Ogerby, and see what he said about the Negro. You understand? So we want to sit there and look at this part right here as well. This is not poor scholarship. Do you know who this is? Before I type it in, I want to sit there and ask the people, do we know what we're looking at on the right-hand side? Who is that? What is that an image also of that we're looking at? Anybody care to answer? I'm going to get my bottle of water and give me about 30 seconds and I'll be back. Maybe somebody would sit there and be able to talk about or give an understanding of what they think that person is there inside the picture. Because we, blessed be the creator, we're going to go in this particular presentation. Next slide. When we sit there and come back, I got to get my water bottle. Excuse me. Any attempts, any tries, any understanding of that? Da-da-da-da. Thank you. Somebody had it right. General Hannibal. General Hannibal. That's exactly who that is. And that was an image, brothers and sisters, that the ancient people of the Carthaginians used. Did you know that? That's something, brothers and sisters, we want to point out and get into for, as noted, edification purposes. Did you know that scholars say that the Carthaginians and their language was akin to the Hebrew language? Did you know why Rome wanted to destroy Carthage? Why, of all the places, would Rome not want to colonize Carthage, but want to destroy it? Why, of all the places, did they not want to sit there and just colonize Jerusalem, but destroy it and change its name to Alia Capatonina and so forth and so on? Why do they want to sit there and do that, brothers and sisters? Remember we spoke about Herod, right? The Edomite. Have you ever heard, brothers and sisters, of what they call the protocols of the learned elders of Zion? The protocols of the learned elders of Zion, translated by a guy named Nilus, Nilus, right? Speaks about a particular snake that the ancient people of Esau, Edom had, and how they were to go from one place to the next and infiltrate, starting with Greece, then Rome, then going over to Britain. So the Edomites were already in plan to go into European places and portray certain things. The Edomites already knew where the true house of Israel was scattered. So we could begin to see that the Edomites being friends with brothers and sisters, with the Romans, why the Romans would want to destroy Carthage. Because they knew good and well, brothers and sisters, and we want to sit there and name a particular tribe. Asher, the people in Carthage in part laid claim to being part of the tribe of Asher and the tribe of Zebulun of Israel. Those are two different tribes. Asher and Zebulun were part of the people known as the Carthaginians. And when you go to the book Hebrewisms of West Africa, citing a source, it gets into that. These are not things you're just making up. You can research and check the information out yourself. Any questions? Next slide. Here we go. Read equals let us read. If you think a black people living in or is from Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, or Sudan makes him or her automatically a Hamite, your information is off. There were Israelites in Pathros, which was in southern Egypt, since the era of Jeremiah. Jeremiah was a Levite. The Bible speaks of the Pathrusim coming from Mizraim/Egypt, which we already explained that in the past. So if there were Israelites in Pathros, the singular of Pathrusim, in Egypt, in the time before Persia came to power, how then can we say 100% that the people in or from, no, from does not mean indigenous, African places were Hamites. Everybody that is from Africa, we're not talking about indigenous to Africa. We're talking about from Africa. Doesn't automatically make you a Hamite. The passing away of the rapper in California shows on Facebook that many Israelites do not study. The diaspora of Israel, thought to be going to Europe in bulk quantity, is not accurate. It would, as pointed out in my book, Deuteronomy 28:15-68, History Untold to the Masses, makes more sense for the people of the Israelites to travel to African places. Jacob went to Africa, Uriah went to Africa, and Jeremiah was taken to Africa. Now, most people, when they think of the Bible, you think of Uriah, you think of the Hittite that David murdered. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Uriah that ran into the land of Egypt, fleeing from King Jehoiakim of Judah, which you read of in Jeremiah 36 in the Bible. Do you know how many Israelites, and I hate to have to say it, have never read or heard of a Uriah in the time of Jeremiah? You know why? And I don't mean no disrespect to any brother or sister, but when you're teaching as Israelites, is Deuteronomy 28 is one. We don't eat pork. We don't eat shrimp. We don't celebrate holidays. We keep the Sabbath. Women don't wear pants. Men don't get lineups. If that's what your main teachings is and are, and you don't get into the language, you miss a whole lot. When you don't get into the history, you miss a whole lot. So what people quote unquote excuse is the language doesn't bring salvation and all of that other stuff may not even matter. No, just be candid and state it ain't your course or portion. Just as much not to be haughty, science of the Bible is not my forte personally as Moreh Yeshaya. It's not really my forte. It's not my thing as the saying goes. So because it doesn't interest me, doesn't sit there and mean it doesn't matter. There is a science when you read about the legions that came from the Ark of the Covenant on the Philistines. There is a science that Joshua used to find out who took the devoted thing and found out it was Achan. There is a science behind that. Just because it doesn't interest me to find that out doesn't mean it doesn't matter. So if Hebrew doesn't interest you, that doesn't mean it's less important. You understand? Just because history may not interest you doesn't mean it's not important. It just ain't your thing. Know where you fit in at. And we're going to talk about that later on, about knowing where you fit in at and helping the people. Let's go on, brothers and sisters. Isaiah 11, speaking of the Israelites being in Egypt, Patros Cush. This is during the era when Assyria was in power. If we remember that Isaiah 10 and before that Isaiah 7 speaks of Assyria, we have to ask, maybe why would Israelites during the Assyrian hegemony be in African places? Why would the Israelites be in African places when Assyria is in power? Next slide, please. Now, pardon the wording, but I wanted to make a point be driven home. This is from the Boondocks, the cartoon that used to come on. I think it may still come on. The thing says, read, N-word, read. See, I ain't even got to sit there and say it. There's an elder who emailed me and was like, Yeshaya, stop using certain words because it can be a turnoff. You can still get the point across. So I take the wisdom with that. Right? Read, N-word, read. And there's a book being shown. Of course, there's no words in it. Then the person there screaming, no! And there are some people who are still like that. Did you know that? You know there are people in the so-called consciousness that say reading messes with their karma? Now, next slide. Sidebar. When you have a mind that says Edom is the white man, and that he is by default your biological national brother, this post is not for you. You understand? This post is not for you. This presentation is not for you. If you can sit there and try to align yourself by thinking Edom must be the European and saying, quote, the hell with an African, and therefore you must be aligned closer to the Europeans, or quote unquote the said white man. Nah, let's go on. The Israelites, knowing an enemy stronger than them was coming from the north. So it would make sense
that they should go south. If they were going south, they met with Hamites. Now, this leads us to understand that some Hamites despised Israelites. Many did actually. Did you know that? That there were many Hamites that despised Israelites? Let's go on. The Israelites were told that they will be scattered according to the among the nations. This is beginning to be seen in Zechariah 7, when it says Israel was scattered among the nations. Zechariah was during the time of the Persian rule. Jeremiah, before the timing of Zechariah, spoke of Israel and Judah being subdued, first by Assyria, then Babylon. Then, as stated, Zechariah spoke of Israel scattered among the nations. So let me understand, or pardon me, let me try to make it understood what we just read right in this paragraph or this point in the PowerPoint right here. Move this over to the side. Assyria was in power, then Babylon, then Persia. Jeremiah was during the era when Babylon was in power. Zechariah was during the era when Persia was in power. So if we see the Israelites were already being scattered during the era of the Persian Empire, where were they scattered to? You understand? Sidebar. When you try to hold a man-made tribal chart as par with the prophecies and history in the scriptures, this post is not for you. Lastly, now this is addressing some of the people's comments. Oh, the rapper was from Eritrea and his history, so he must be a quote heathen Hamite, blase, blase, blah. Now let's look at this right here, right? Lastly, if the rapper who was killed was trying to do good, like many people were saying, for black people, and you think that he was a quote heathen Hamite, you have to ask, are we the quote heathen in Acts to where a said heathen Hamite has to try to help us? See, the rapper Nipsey, may he rest in peace, was said by many people that he was doing good or endeavoring in doing good and endeavoring to do good for black people. Now, to the Israelites who are saying that this rapper Nipsey, he was a quote heathen Hamite, right? Now, brothers and sisters, if he is dead and there are people saying that he was doing good, then what name are you while you alive still making? This brings me to the point that I want to talk about in part as well, right? I want to talk about a particular subject matter, and I thank the people for taking the time to even listen, right? I had a discussion with a very beautiful friend of mine, beautiful in spirit and beautiful in character, right? And I wanted to read a list of some things. Biscuit Cutter, A.P. Ashbourne, Coin Changer, James Burrow, Car Coupler, Andrew Beard, Stainless Steel Pads, Alfred Benjamin, Disposable Syringe, Phil Brooks, Corn Planter, Henry Blair, Motor, Jay Gregory, Guitar, Robert Fleming, Toilet Commode, T. Elkins. Do you know what I'm reading is a list of black inventions? What is the point in reading this? Is because if we can sit there and say that our people invented this, that, and the third, Carver and the peanut and the other things he did, Granville T. Woods in the aspect of the electric light and the traffic light and so forth and so on, right? These things, such as the cell phone, which we use, which is also invented by our brother, a black man, right? What are we doing to sit there and continue that legacy? See, you can't say that we want reparations and that we've been cheated out of the things that we committed and done for the world when you have dropped the ball. When we have dropped the ball. People who have dropped the ball you don't get a ring. For those into basketball, you know what it is. For those who drop the ball, you don't get the royalties. Do you really understand the analogy where we're going? If we are talking about our ancestors were great, and we are not doing things so that way we can do great things, then what was the point in talking about those who did great things? And this is why I give thanks unto the Creator, because it is not to be haughty. How long were we going to always only talk about Rudolph Windsor in his book, Hebrewisms of West Africa? Have y'all written, the Israelites, written any books or put any literature out in the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years? Babylon and Timbuktu was originally written in 1969. May the Most High continue to bless Rudolph Windsor's life and his family's life. His book was originally written in 1969. This is now the year 2019. His book was originally written 50 years ago. There's nothing wrong with citing it, but did we sit there and take from the work that Rudolph Windsor, Moses Farrar, who also is a great author and an elder, both of them being over years, over the age of 80, did we pick up the baton and move on? You understand? So the thing we want to point out for edification purposes is, do we pick up the baton or do we drop it? Because if you drop it, brothers and sisters, you have sat there and just disrespected your ancestors. You understand? If you don't pick up and use your skill, your talent, your gift, brothers and sisters, it has no weight with that. Now, I want to address something real quick before we get back to the actual PowerPoint and subject. When the so-called quote-unquote philosophers, as well as the Habesha, there are two main groups in current Ethiopia that lay claim to being of the house of Israel. One call themselves Beta Israel. The other are referred to as Habesha. Those are two different groups of people. When the Ashkenazi Jews, and I'm addressing somebody in a comment about scriptures in Ethiopia and so forth and so on. When the European Jews, and I'm talking about the Jewish people you see in Israel today, or for Brooklyn and Crown Heights, or for some Miami, if you will, right? When they were taking their records, what they did, according to the New York Times in 1991, was sit there and what we call as younger black men, house them and take every single record that they sit there and could. You understand? And now the Falashas, who are calling themselves Beta Israel by surname, right? For them to be given, quote unquote, a fake citizenship and be airlifted to Ethiopia, they actually traded their records that they had with the Europeans. So to answer the question about that, yes, when you go into their own records, you can go and look up a book called the Orit. The Orit has what we call in the Bible Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. All right? So that's what we want to talk about. It's not written in Hebrew, it's written in Amharic. They speak a language called Amharic. And the Orit is the Amharic word for Torah in Hebrew. So hopefully that was the answer to the question sufficient. Getting back to the subject matter of getting into carrying a baton. Brothers and sisters, we cannot drop the baton. You understand? Now, brothers and sisters, so we can continue on in the presentation about the aspect of carrying the baton. It is very, very, very important to understand how that should be and could be. And let me break this down real quick. because I don't want to get sidetracked going back and forth with the chat, even though I appreciate the comment, because we are in aspect of this, which was a whole nother subject. All right. Now, when we getting back into the subject matter of carrying the baton, all right, we should not drop the ball. When you find discussions that is not uplifting, that is not enlightening, but is just soothing, that's part of dropping the ball. There's a famous woman that dropped her ball recently, Oprah. Oprah was known for doing what she could to help people. Oprah was known for doing certain things and buying you a car and getting you this and so forth and so on. Yeah, when the show now, of course, now she's a worker for them, and this is what I mean. In this particular regard, for Oprah to do an interview with people about Michael Jackson supposedly molesting them, when Michael Jackson has been dead since 2009, her value has decreased. The fact that you got to be known for talking about a dead man and bringing up charges against a dead man who, and you the people who actually stated, according to Monique, that they recanted their statements that they made in the past about Michael molesting them, that just go to show you that the level and the quality that you, Miss Winfrey, had has sunken. You're not on that same level as you was. So what the, for the lack of a better terminology, the white man is doing is, let's use Oprah so that way black people will hate her. So that way when she gets older, we can drop her and take everything back. But she doesn't see, all she sees is, like some Israelites, not to be hateful, I see views, I'm getting views, I am being seen. You don't realize that every eye is not good. Every dollar is not good. Every click and every like is not good. You understand? So with that being the case, brothers and sisters, we want to sit there and point out, if we will, we can't drop the baton. All of that debating nonsense is garbage. That's not what's going to get us there. There should have never been an actual concept of we're going to talk about when our deliverance will be. We need to more so talk about when do we sit there, brothers and sisters, and try to do right one by each other. How to be a better husband, a better father, a better brother. For the sisters, the better mom, the better wife, the better friend, if you will. You understand? And I'm not trying to take shots or be disrespectful or insult anybody or anything of that sort. Because in the beginning of this, we already went over, brothers and sisters, the aspect and the teaching of people who sit there and give you a date when the Most High didn't give them that date to give. We already went over that. So, stop dropping the baton. Stop using the achievements of our ancestors while we are not trying to, who we will be known as ancestors, is not trying to do some of the great achievements. Whatever the Most High has given you as a gift, take it and let that shine. Don't, and this is another point, brothers and sisters, do not let people who have not reached his or her potential tell you when you're doing your thing or doing your potential that somebody can sit there and say that you're arrogant. Because that's another thing. Everybody who is called arrogant is not truly arrogant. They just are called such by a man or woman who has not reached his or her potential. So if you are okay not advancing and you see somebody else doing something that he or she has been blessed to be able to do, and if you see that person as being arrogant, that's not arrogance. That's the gift the Most High gave them, him or her. It tells you, brothers and sisters, right? Cursed be he who doeth the work of the Most High deceitfully. With that being said, brothers and sisters, we want to point out for edification purposes. When the Most High has moved you, and somebody wants to be like Michal, the daughter of Saul, the wife of David, oh, you was looking like this in front of the eyes of the people. Hey, yo, Michal, check this here. We good. I'm done. What I'm doing is for the Most High. Michal, if you can't understand the work that's being put in is for the Creator and make up heaven and earth to His glory, then it's time for us to separate. Bye-bye. It's been real. You understand? So let's go back into this particular aspect here. Next slide. Now, this is some notes that I personally made when 1993, and I was like a little kid, 13 at the time, in a congregation called Hashaba. And what this is basically a list of captivities that the house of Israel, unfortunately, has been in. Egypt, the hand of the nations that Israel did not destroy. Cushan, Rish Atayim, Eglon, Yabin, Midianites, Philistines again, Assyria, Babylon, Medes, and Persians, Greeks, Romans, and then America. Brothers and sisters, that's a partial listing of what happened with the house of Israel. And did you know that in each of them, you can sit there and find evidence of how they said, certainly when you deal with Babylon and Assyria, because the Assyrian king, Shalmaneser III, spoke about Assyria in his records. Now, that doesn't mean much to Israelites, but there are some who say, well, you don't really find Israel outside of, the Bible. No, this is why we said before, read, brother. We ain't going to say the word that the Boondock said. Read, brother/sister, read. You understand? This is something we want to point out for edification purposes. Now, for those who might wonder, you can look up, and I want to type some of this stuff in, right? Ancient Egypt, speaking about the Israelites in ancient Egypt, is, for instance, the Brooklyn Papyrus 35.1446. I remember debating with somebody, and I had the time to online. Oh, well, we don't see no evidence of the Israelites as slaves in Egypt. Go to the Brooklyn Papyrus 35.1446, and you will see that. Then you have what's called the Zenon Papyrus. Now, this is about Israelites that was living in Egypt during the time when the Ptolemies was in there. And the Israelites in the Zenon Papyrus were described as dark-skinned with protruding lips. Maybe like the image of Hannibal that we saw earlier. Who knows? Then, when you could go into what's called the Hellenos Papyrus of Rome, is when they actually speak about the Ayuda, or the people of Judah. So for the Brooklyn Papyrus in ancient Egypt, the Zenon Papyrus during the time of the Greek hegemony, and the Hellenos Papyrus is all external records speaking about the evidence and the existence of the Israelites in history. Israelites, take note, because you're going to find people asking you for those kind of things. All right, let's go on to the next slide, if we will. Shalom. This is the conclusion of this particular presentation. We want to say it was indeed an honor to present this to you all. And we hope that you all learned from this. There will be suggested videos in the description of this video. There is also a book on lulu.com for those who are interested, called Deuteronomy 28:15-68, History Untold to the Masses. All right? That's some information in that particular regard. Let's go on to the next slide. The point, brothers and sisters, in this, and I want to sit there and speak very candidly and respectfully, because we're going to close out right now. Due to the timing, it's almost 10 p.m., and I have certain things that I need to get done before the night is actually out. But this PowerPoint was intended to go on and on and on and on. But due to the time, I'm not able to continue such. So we're going to hold it at this particular point. You understand? And move on. The next presentation we want to do, and subscribe to the channel if you care to, and hit the bell on the top so you can get the notifications when we go live again. We want to go live again on this channel April 4th, which is this coming so-called Thursday, or as we say in Israel, Yom Kamishi. All right? So if there's any questions or comments, gotta ask that the people put it inside the comment board when this is uploaded, due to the timing that we're dealing with. For one, I've been advised to not make a video so long because you lose the attention span of the people. The other reason is because it's approaching 10 p.m. and I have to get certain things done. Nonetheless, I want to give thanks to the Most High, Yah, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. And to the people who joined and commented and spoke, thank you for your comments, your questions, and so forth. All right? Yeah, Brother Benjamin, give me a call when you can so we could talk. Shalom.